you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with.
Yes.
I looked around with the people I was spending the most time with, and I'm like, I love my friends, I love my family, but that's not the life I want to have for myself.
I'd love to learn all about your journey. I know especially that you've recently moved into full-time content creation.
Oh yeah.
Tell us more about that decision and what you were doing before.
So I've kind of been doing my own thing, TM, for about 2 years now, almost exactly 2 years, which is pretty wild. Before that, actually right out of college, I went into Wall Street. And so I was on Wall Street for a while. And it was crazy because for so long, I thought that was my dream. And I had worked so hard to get there. And then I was there and then I realized, crap, I actually hate this. The dream that I'd had for so long wasn't mine. It was just the one that I thought that I should have. And so eventually I made the decision to quit. At that time, I was working on like a different startup part-time, went full-time on that. And I'm a big believer, like instead of putting all of your eggs in one basket, put many eggs in many baskets, increase your surface area for luck. And so one of these small bets per se that I did was when I was growing my Twitter audience, and then I started to post videos on YouTube. And that was actually on a different channel. But that first YouTube channel of mine ended up blowing up within a few months. Got to the point where I was making over $100 per day just from AdSense from that YouTube channel.
That's crazy.
Not even including all the sponsorships and everything else. But the niche, the space that I was in was not one that I was genuinely interested in. It was just one that I had kind of fallen into. I can tell that story if you want. But long story short, I ended up getting super burnt out because I was doing something that I didn't love. And I got to the point where I had to completely stop everything because of how burnt out it was. I couldn't open my computer. I could barely get up out of bed in the morning. And so I took some months kind of off to have an existential crisis, think about what I wanted to do in life. And after all of that, eventually I realized that I really did love YouTube and I loved creating videos, but just I had to make sure that it was in a space that I was interested in. So I restarted a brand new YouTube channel around 3 months ago. And so kind of starting over from scratch, but it's been fun.
Wow, there's so much to unpack there. I already have 50 questions. Like, we're going to be here forever. I guess I want to start with the Wall Street dream. Like, why did you think that was for you? And what about it really changed your mind?
So the funny thing is I actually went to school for hospitality. My major was in hotel administration. And I had minors in real estate and in wine.
So cool. Where'd you go to school?
Cornell.
Okay. I know this program. I was like,
yes.
I feel like she's talking about the Cornell program.
Yep, for sure. But the thing is like, even though your major is in hotel administration, the large majority of people, graduates from that school, did not go into hospitality ops. They all went into finance and banking and real estate. And that was like what the cool kids did. That was sexy. That was trendy. And I think I was just like very influenced. If you think about like what even the professors were talking about and the examples in which all of like the problem sets were done in, the examples were all related to kind of like more corporate jobs. And so I think over the course of my 3.5 years in college, I was conditioned to really, really want that. And I think like to crave that acceptance too, right? I think like coming from like a partly Asian background as well, there's this expectation of like, hey, like my parents sacrificed so much for me to be able to get this education and go to school. And I did not want to let them down, you know, and the pride in which they felt of me getting this like very wanted job was very real.
Yeah, nope, that's so real. Thanks for saying that. I mean, I definitely can relate to that. And I think a lot of people can. Like, oftentimes we think we're like supposed to be, there's something like makes sense on paper and we do it. And we're like, oh, it makes sense on paper. I think I will be excited about that. And then you get there and it's not what you expect. So things on paper are definitely not things in practice. And I think that's something that like there's only one way to do it. And it's you have to like literally go through and experience it.
Yeah.
Cool. So how did you fall into content creation? And tell us about this channel that blew up that you weren't really passionate about at the end.
Yeah. Okay. So I fell into content creation in the first place because, first, someone on Twitter DM'd me and said, hey, have you ever listened to the Indie Hackers podcast? And I was like, no. And they were like, you should check it out. So I checked it out, and one of the episodes featured 3 different video creators of different types, and one of them was Ali Abdul. I don't know if you're familiar with Ali. He's like a huge productivity and tech YouTuber now. I think he crossed 4 million subscribers, 3 or 4. He just came out with a book today, actually, which is crazy. And I watched some of his videos, but in the podcast, he talked about how much money he was making from YouTube, and I was like, holy moly, you can make a lot of money from YouTube.
How much was he making?
Like 1.3, 1.5 mil per year.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like that was just, I think that's I can't remember if that was revenue or profit because he has like a large team. But you have to fact check me on this.
We'll look it up. Yeah.
But the crazy thing about Ali that I didn't realize before, which is like weird because in retrospect, I'm like, oh yeah, duh. But he's not a Mr. Beast style YouTuber. He's not like crazy spectacle challenge type of video. He talks about productivity and tech. He's like very refined, and also like, you know, he has a personality, but much more toned down than the crazy Mr. Beast challenge videos that you see. And I think it clicked in me like, hey, you know, I had never done video content whatsoever before, but I'm thinking, well, if you can make this money from YouTube and kind of get this organic reach that YouTube very uniquely provides, that seems really great. And yeah, I'm not the funniest person in the world, but maybe I don't have to be in order to get somewhere on YouTube.
Right. Like he opened up the possibility of that being a potential person you could be.
For sure. And so then I consumed a ton of content on YouTube about how to YouTube. And I just, one thing that I kept seeing was make 1 video per week for a year. And no matter what, just keep doing that. Mm-hmm. So I started. I started making videos, first time making video content ever. Like I wasn't even really on podcast. TikTok was around, but I wasn't on it. Like very new territory for me. But I could write, and I could always write. And so I would script everything out, and I would feel a lot more confident on camera because I knew that what I was saying was good, I guess.
Yeah.
So I did that. And this was like around July of 2021. And then late 2021 came around. And you know what else came around in late 2021?
Crypto
and NFTs.
Yep.
So it's like all of a sudden, all over Twitter, everyone was mentioning these things called NFTs. Some people loved them and some people hated them. But no one could really tell me exactly what they were. Mm-hmm. And I was not one to be like left out of conversations. And I believe that the best way to learn is by doing, bias to action. So I thought, hey.
Oh my God, yes, you can say that again.
So I thought, okay, hey, why don't I create my own experimental NFT collection, not to make any money or anything. I mean, it'd be cool if it did, but more so just to figure out what the heck people are actually talking about, and just kind of learn what it is so I can be, at least I can understand what people are talking about when they talk about this, and I can be like a more informed person. So I came out with this NFT collection in mind that I made. I made a lot of mistakes in the process. I had no idea what gas fees were. Like everything was brand new to me. And after I released that collection, you know, I'm a big fan of building in public. And so first I built in public via a Twitter thread, a very long Twitter thread about like my NFT collection experience and the mistakes that I made and what I learned from it. And that thread kind of blew up. And so then I turned that into a YouTube video. And the YouTube video, I think it's like, I don't know, 650,000 views at this point. So
wow,
it completely blew up.
Yeah.
And while it was in the process of blowing up, I was like, what do I do here? Because I had a problem. And the problem was my video was getting so many views and I had so many people coming onto my channel saying like, wow, I love this video. This is the best NFT related video that I've seen on the internet. Thank you so much. And like all these people who were interested in NFTs were flooding into my channel and subscribing. And so the question was, well, do I go back to the old type of content that I was making, which I didn't really have a niche at all. I was just experimenting. Or do you like niche down to blow up? Do you lean in? And I talked to some people and eventually I decided to lean in and kind of like carry that moment. I think like the next video, the next NFT related video I released after that, I think now has over 200,000 views. So it's like when something hits, if you ride the wave, it can carry you for a while. And it's kind of like how my channel blew up.
Mm-hmm. And it's really important to recognize that sometimes when something doesn't feel natural and intuitive, but then it feels like the right play and the right strategy, I think it's important to be like, it's okay for me to lean into this. Like, everything is temporary and everything is fully in your control, or like any day you can be like, never mind, don't want to do this anymore. Versus I think a lot of the times people fear just starting or trying or just like letting themselves like get carried by the wave for a while, when especially if it doesn't feel like something that they had like predetermined in their head, or like that was like an idea of what they thought they would do. I feel like I have very similarly done that with like content that I've created on TikTok, where I'm like, I didn't expect this video to blow up, but it did. And maybe I don't have much to say on it, but maybe I have like 2-3 more videos in me. Like, I'll go put that out there. And then when it stops feeling authentic and it doesn't, oh, great, I'm done. I rode the wave. I like captured that value for myself. And like, now you can go move on and do the next thing. And I think that comes with a sense of like confidence in yourself and knowing that like you are the ultimate controller of your life, and like no one can tell you when to do something or when not to do something. So sometimes it's actually smart, like following, what is trendy versus sometimes following your intuition. I think we romanticize this idea of like following your intuition all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I like, after having gone through that, I kind of see it from both sides, in that, yes, the amount of growth that I experienced from that old YouTube channel and following that trend was great. But when I first leaned in, I thought, hey, I'll do this for maybe like a year or two and then slowly start to transition into another niche, because I knew that I didn't want to follow this long term. But my problem was, like, I burned out. And I think like that's like the one thing that I would caution against going against your intuition, is that if you just want to do a couple, potentially that's fine, but don't stay with it for too long, because then you won't want to do anything else. And another thing too is that when it came to the decision to make a brand new channel afterwards versus just trying to like transition the old one, YouTube is such like a tricky game in terms of there's so much that you can do to kill a channel. And that's why you see a lot of channels with like hundreds of thousands of subscribers whose videos only get a couple thousand views. And you're like, what happened here? That's not adding up. And you look a few years back and it's like, okay, a few years back, their videos were getting hundreds of thousands of views, but something happened for them to kill their channel. And once a channel is dead, once it's like have like very low views, it's really hard to come back from that. And, it kind of gets into like what the YouTube algorithm is and kind of like how it serves videos to viewers. But there is a lot of potential problems with finding yourself in an audience that is completely unrelated to what you actually want to be doing.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I think getting burnt out is like not worth it no matter what it is.
Yeah.
Right. It really, really holds you back for a long time, especially in that recovery process. So like, I fully agree with what you say. I guess like, what is the right balance between following your intuition versus like working smart and like tapping into a trend? Like, it feels like there's this fine balance you need to attain, because, getting burnt out from something is never worth it. Right. And we know that. But like you mentioned, a few videos, maybe like not following your intuition, maybe like riding in that wave, riding a trend, could be a great way for you to like capture value, get some momentum. And then there's like clearly like a point in time where like, okay, like if I do this anymore, like we might be getting to negative returns, right?
Yeah.
So do you have like any advice or thoughts around how someone can like be more mindful about that in their life?
Yeah, like the one rule that I have now with all of my new YouTube videos is I ask myself this question before every single video, which is, if this video were to go viral, would that help me or hurt me? And I think like there are definitely ways of integrating trends into your content, but still having the core of the video be not the trend, but it's like, it's still kind of, it all comes back eventually to you and what you do want your niche to be. For example, let's say that you are a productivity YouTuber and you want to ride the AI trend, right? Instead of making a video about like the top 10 AI tools that exist, maybe you'll say that the top 10 AI tools for productivity, right? And like keep it related to your niche. And that way, yeah, you can take advantage of this wave. But if that video were to go viral, the people that were interested in that video, yes, would be interested in AI, but would also still be interested in productivity. So it's more likely that they would be interested in the rest of your content moving forward.
Yeah. No, that makes so much sense. I will definitely keep that in mind, especially because I'm still a very new creator myself. Well, so tell us about this new channel. Like, what are you talking about there? And like, why does that excite you more?
Yeah, okay. So this new channel is really interesting. I started it because there is a lot of like how-to content on YouTube about how to do YouTube, but much more broad, like how to do challenge type or Mr. Beast style of videos, more like entertainment videos, while there isn't a lot of education about how to make a both educational but also compelling and engaging YouTube video, but educational YouTube video. And so I saw this gap and I'm like, the how-to YouTube is niche is pretty saturated, but I know a lot about it. I do some speaking engagements related to at least like the early process of doing YouTube. So I thought, hey, like let's like this. I could talk about YouTube all day long for years. So let's like try to lean into this. And something really crazy that has happened recently was it's the 20th today. So 10 days ago, I started a 90-day challenge on my YouTube channel where I'm giving myself 90 days to get monetized on YouTube. So that's getting 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours. And I am like previously, I have uploaded like one video per week max, more likely one video every 2 weeks. For this challenge, I started with 3 videos per week. I'm now moving down to 2 for a couple of reasons, which we can talk about. But the main thing here is, can I release one build in public video every week, kind of like going through the behind the scenes of the challenge and what's working, what's not working.
Right. Which works so well for specifically the type of content you're making.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because like build in public type of content has worked really well on Twitter, but I haven't seen a ton of it do well on YouTube. But I think the idea of like packaging it into a challenge is really interesting. That's why the spectacle videos do so well, is because there's something like there's like a big payoff at the end. The interesting thing is with Ryan Trahan's Penny series, which took YouTube by storm for a while, he did something that no one has really done before on YouTube, which is he took the idea of like a big spectacle and payoff at the end, which is his whole thing was using like only one penny to travel across the entire nation and deliver the penny to Mr. Beast. And like everything would come from that one penny. Like trade the penny for a pen, trade the pen for $1, buy a bottle of water with $1, and then sell that for $2. Right. And like that's how he made his way across the entire country, which was insane. And his 30-day challenge was really interesting because he released one video every single day, in kind of like a vlog format, which hasn't really done well on YouTube for a while, but his videos took off. So I'm like, okay, can I kind of harness some of that, turn that into a challenge type of concept, but done over a longer time frame and still showing the behind the scenes so I have like one build in public video per week and then one growth video per week. And the growth video is kind of my playground for experimenting with different video types. And so what I'm doing right now is I will like spend countless hours studying a particular YouTuber and the interviews that they've given, condense all of those hours of interviews into like a 4-step framework that they tend to follow, or like habits that they tend to have, and kind of like package it into a way that might be hopefully useful to aspiring YouTubers. So that's kind of like what I've been doing for this upcoming 90-day challenge.
So cool. And what do you use like the end result with your YouTube account? Like what's the vision behind it, and like what do you want to do with it once you have like that subscriber account that you're really excited about?
Yeah, I mean, the ultimate goal for me is to create a more like content-driven business. So the YouTube channel should always be there. I believe that YouTube is and will become the most, I guess, like the largest and most impactful and most relevant social media platform. And so I think that to have to be one of the top creators on YouTube, especially in the next like 5 to 10 years, you don't need a network. Like you just have you. You right. are the
and
person.
Your audience.
Yeah, and it's like the distribution that you can get from having a large YouTube channel is insane. You think about Mr. Beast and Mr. Beast Burger and Feastables, right? It's like, yes, his food is pretty good quality, but it's not the quality of food that is bringing people like flocking to them and selling them off shelves faster than they can be stocked. It's because of the association with the brand. Mm-hmm. And there are countless examples of different YouTubers who are creating different like brands and companies related to their audience. You think about Mark Rober, who does science videos. Mm-hmm. He has it's like science camp package where you order and it gets delivered to your house like once per week or once per month or something, with like, you know, kids can do a science experiment and watch his videos as they do it. I don't think there have been enough creator-led businesses so far. At least I think that we're just scratching the surface into like what's possible. But my own like big, hairy, audacious goal is to hopefully get big enough and get knowledgeable enough and know other people who are knowledgeable enough to create a sort of like incubator accelerator for YouTubers, kind of like the YC of YouTube per se. Because I think that there's just so much potential in YouTube. And if you think about like anyone now, like you ask a typical like high schooler, what do you want to be when you grow up? They'll say, oh, I want to be a TikToker or a YouTuber. So there are so many people who have interest in this, but who might not have the knowledge or the resources, because it does take a lot to grow on YouTube. It takes, if not money, then time. And you think about most people who are like, I don't know, I have maybe like 2 hours per week that I can dedicate to YouTube. And it's like, that's not enough. You won't be able to get there on that time.
Right. And this next generation, like they're really have a propensity for video content. Like it's more intuitive for this. So it like makes sense that like we're going to have 10 times, 100 times more YouTube creators like in the future, and that content-led businesses are going to be like a very common thing. How do you think about businesses that are not content-led? Like how do you think they're going to compete with content creator-led businesses in the future? And like, do you think there's even room for them in the market? Like think a decade from now.
Yeah. I mean, I think all at least B2C brands should have a content presence, should have a solid social media presence, or at least like, you know, what I do see a lot moving forward is like, not just sponsorships, but brands like truly partnering with YouTubers, with larger creators, and more equity deals. So as opposed to just like, hey, like I will give you, you know, $1,000, $2,000, $10,000 to make a video on this. Like, hey, can I give you 10% of this company? And then you can like, and for you to make X number of videos per month or per year. And I potentially see that being more of a thing in the next decade. Now we'll see. But it's really interesting for sure.
Do you have any thoughts around UGC and like how that really resonates with audiences today? And if you think that's like sustainable for businesses in the future to like lean on to?
I don't have a ton of experience with it. I think like it has to be done tastefully, because I do think that there's like a degree of UGC that is a little bit exploitative to creators if done too much, right? And so it's like, you know, creators trying to like keep generating certain content for a brand, but maybe like not getting paid for it, or like, you know, only getting paid under X number of conditions, which are kind of like not met very well. So I think like, you know, I do think that there's a lot of interest in it. I also think that like building trust in general is really interesting too when it comes to sponsorships or any like brand deals or anything else like that. Because if your audience believes that, you know, you're only creating this content about this brand because you hope to make money from it, then the whole point is kind of gone, right? Because it's like, well, should I actually be using this hair serum, or are you just saying this?
Is it even authentic? Yeah,
exactly. So I think like it's like a tricky line to toe.
Yeah. Okay. Would you ever consider going back to Wall Street? Or is that just like done?
No, never.
Yeah,
never.
So you found the thing that you are very excited about, very happy with. Do you see this being like the next 50 years of your career, 20 years of your career?
Hopefully.
Is this a forever thing?
Hopefully, yeah.
How can we find our forever job?
Have breakdowns and existential crises in life.
Can relate.
Like, I don't know. I think this might be morbid, but I do think about death a lot. In terms of like, man, like our lives, our time here on Earth is limited. And it's like, it's a pretty scary thought. And when I think about it, I'm like, man, I don't want to waste my life. And I don't want to spend so many years of my life doing things that I'm not excited about and just kind of like being pulled through.
We only have a finite time on this planet.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with it?
And so like when I was in my existential crisis thinking about like what I wanted to do in life, I think having experienced, I failed twice in terms of trying to do something that I thought that I wanted to do. The first time was on Wall Street. I thought that was my dream. I got there and realized, wait, it's not. And then with the NFT YouTube channel, that one was trickier because I was doing something that was a much more creative field, which I know that I'm a creative person, but it was still in a niche that I had no passion for whatsoever. And there was this moment in that channel where I thought about, if I wanted to be doing something that I didn't love, I could just be in Wall Street making more money than this. And so
that's very true.
And so I think like that was a really good reference point for me over, hey, like baseline is being unhappy, getting paid a lot, doing something that I don't love. That's baseline. What can I do to take it to here and here and here and here? And I just think about, okay, like in life, I think, there's a saying about how you should look at like what you did in a particular day and think about if every single day looked like this for the next 10, 20, 30 years, would I be happy? And if the answer is no, what do you need to change? And I think like I did a lot of work like that and just like, in general, thinking about a combination of things that I liked and that I was interested in and things that I was good at, because if you do something that you're interested in but you're just really bad at it, like you're not going to like it as much versus if you're doing something that you're naturally good at or you are better at. And that's kind of like the mixture of all of these things kind of like led me to this path.
Yeah. I think we are often put this very negative connotation to existential crisis, but it almost feels like a rite of passage. Like it's a healing process to like figure out like what do I ultimately want to do and like how am I going to be the best version of myself that makes sense for like my version of happiness. I feel like we need to like normalize existential crisis as like a positive awakening. It's just like a process that we need to go through, right?
Yeah, I mean they say like after a breakdown comes a breakthrough. And it's like, okay, I mean, I believe that 100%. Like, yes, it's like very cliche, but truly it's like some of my biggest breakthroughs in terms of like having more clarity on life has come from a breakdown.
Yeah. So. What is there like a productive way to have a breakdown or like an unproductive way to do this? Like, is there a right or wrong answer for this? Because sometimes I'll be having an existential crisis and like what you're saying is so relatable. I have like a million, so totally get it. I get mad at myself. I'm like, this again, like, you're being dramatic, blah, blah. Like, I really spin it as a negative, and I think I give a lot of negative energy to myself. I want to be better. I want to, in those moments, like, be kind with myself, and then also actually come out of it, with that big breakthrough on the other side. Like, how do we do this better? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think I resonate with that. I think, like, to have a number of like breakdowns within a shorter period of time, you start to really beat up on yourself. And it's like, oh, like I just went through this. I thought that I had the answer. Like, how am I not doing this again? But the only way to kind of like get yourself out of a breakdown is to, I think, like first allow yourself to grieve, like grieve what you thought was the right thing to do or what you are, or what you should be doing. And then give yourself grace in terms of like, hey, like it's, at least I tried, and it's like I watched this, I think it was like some like commencement speech, maybe from Harvard, about quitting. And the professor was saying how, if he had one piece of advice to give to the graduates, it was quit early and quit often. And that, oftentimes like it's hard to be right. You never really know if you're going to be right. And as we talked about kind of in the beginning, before you're there. And so I think it's important to kind of like quit early. Like once you start feeling that like, hey, I don't think this is going to work out for me. Make sure that that's not coming out of a place of fear. Like, hey, like, I'm scared and it's hard. Like, no, like you truly feel on the inside, like this is not in alignment with my values, who I am as a person, what I want my life to look to look like in general. I think the problem that at least I've gone through is I have that feeling and then I'm like, and then I keep doing the thing for like, you know, it's like, you know, if you're in a relationship and you know, this isn't the person for me, it's like, why delay that? You know,
right.
you're just
you're only farther from the person that is right for you.
Exactly. Right. So like, it's not going to be good for you. It's not going to be good for them. Like the entire relationship is like, it's helping nobody. But it's just like a scary thing to initiate a breakup. And so like in that same way, it's like, if you know that a certain career path or like, or a product that you're working on or anything else, if you get that feeling where you're just like, you just kind of know, quit early and don't be afraid to quit often. And I think like the earlier you do that, the more normalized it becomes for you, and the less like, you know, emotional like fear, like I am devastated, I don't know what anything is, like the less, I guess, like impact that will have.
Yeah, I think quitting is another classic example of a very negative word in people's minds. But quitting is really, it should be a celebration of like, I tried something.
Yeah.
It didn't work out. The only way for me to know that it didn't work out was if I tried it. Great. Now I can cross that off and I can go try something else and learn something from that. And you can't actually learn that you fundamentally don't like something or a path's not for you unless you try it. So like the act of quitting is like basically showcasing, like it should be a celebration. I was like, I very speedily got rid of this.
Yes.
And I am one step closer to whatever that is. And it's never going to be something that's immediately obvious. It can take several steps to get there, right?
Yeah, and I think like it's so tough because I think we have this culture of like never give up and just keep trying and perseverance. And it's like, yes, it is. It's very important to not get hung up on hard things and to like push through nails, as one would say. Like just like if things get hard, you're a badass. You can do hard things. You can push through it. But there's a difference between that and just like, you know, being scared to do something because it's hard and innately realizing like this is not the life that I want. And if I keep doing this for the rest of my life, or if I continue down this path, I can see what the end of this is. I can see this is where I'll be in 50 years, and I know I don't want that life. Then, like, get out of there. Get out of there.
Yeah. No, I totally +1 to everything you said. What about content creation do you feel like really resonates to you? I think one thing you mentioned was like you felt like you're a really creative person, right? So that's one thing. But do you think that like content creation can be for everyone? Do you think it can only be for creative people? Is there something else there?
For one, I do think that everyone is creative. I really do truly believe that everybody is creative. I wanted to see what you were going to say. I think anyone who thinks that they are not a creative person, that's just like a limiting belief that you gotta work through because something is holding you back there, and maybe there's some like inner child work that needs to be done. But beyond that, like I that being said, I don't think content creation is for everyone. I think that the content creation game is really tough, which is weird because I think like a lot of people looking out view it as like a very shallow thing. Like, oh, like you're an influencer, you're like a YouTuber. It's like a very like shallow perspective. But if you actually think about all of the like the inner workings of the entire process that goes into it, it's definitely not for everyone. So I think like it's more of like an internal question of, you know, am I okay doing this? Like does the idea of creating, let's say like one video per week for the next 10 years, does that excite me? Or do I think about and I think like I would hate that, or I would get bored of that within a couple of years?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that I really struggled with understanding if content creation was for me. And for a long time, I was like, it's not for me. I'm forcing myself to do it because I think I should do it. But very slowly, I realized it actually is for me. I have a lot of opinions. I like sharing it. I like making impact on people. And I like reaching large audiences with my voice. And that's like, wait, that's content creation.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Like, I really love how many people are getting into content creation now. Because, like, I just think it's so freaking cool how many voices are being
and we've rebranded
amplified.
It from influencer to creator, and I love that.
Yes, absolutely, right? Like, heck yeah. But I mean, I think that so many people have stories to share. And like also like there are a number of different types of content creation that exists as well. Like, yes, there is video content. Some people hate being on video. There are podcasts which could be faceless if you wanted to. There are like, books are still a thing. There are Twitter influencers, and there are just like authors. That's a form of content creation.
So true.
And I think like there is also this perception of like, oh, like I need to be doing like a silly dance in order to be, like get big on whatever platform. It's like, no, there are countless examples of people who don't do that, who use social media to amplify their voice, or to create like a base for a brand, or purely for distribution, which is great.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to shift gears a bit.
Yeah.
I want to know more about why you moved to SF. And tell me more about the stuff you were telling me earlier. It was so interesting. And I feel very similarly. I think there's this very prime opportunity, and what I like to call, or what we all know it as, the defining decade, right? When you're in your 20-somethings.
Yeah.
Why do you believe it's important to live in big cities? I mean, you just moved to San Francisco, so you obviously believe this.
Mm-hmm.
This is very intentional. So yeah, what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, for context, I nomaded for about a year before this. Went to all types of, like, a ton of different states, and
like, where'd you go?
Portugal. Sometimes spent in like outskirts of Seattle, in Denver, North Carolina, Long Island, New York. Sometime in Mexico, sometime in Portugal, 2 places in Portugal. So I was like hopping around a lot.
Yeah.
And each of those places between like a month to a month and a half long. In Portugal, we were there for 3 months. And eventually got tired, because I was like, I'm sick of having Airbnb desks that are just like low quality, and not having like the chairs that I like, and not really having roots. I started to miss. So went back to Denver, which is where my family is from. Stayed there for 6 months, which is the longest that I've been in one place in a while. And I loved Denver. But the thing that I really missed was, well, for one, I realized that I spent all of my time in my apartment. I spent some time out, but all of the time outside of my apartment was spent either like with my parents, just like hanging out, or I was also running a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, so like doing that with my friends, which was a blast. But I realized that the type of people, like you are, as everyone knows, like you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with.
Yes.
I looked around with the people I was spending the most time with, and I'm like, I love my friends, I love my family, but that's not the life I want to have for myself. I don't want to be an average of them. I want to be the average of people who might have like similar dreams and goals and aspirations.
Yeah.
And I just like, I couldn't find those people in Denver. I'm sure they exist, but like I couldn't find them.
And that's your hometown too, right? It's
Yeah.
also a place where you grew up, and people have already formed their opinions about you from like a very early age, right? It's very hard to shift out of that, like a status quo of what their perception of you is. You move to a new city, you're a blank slate, right?
Yeah.
And then you can be anyone.
For sure.
And their expectation of what you can be is not defined yet.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So we came to, my partner and I came to San Francisco because we thought, hey, like that's where the people are who are doing similar crazy things, who are doing the types of things that, parents and childhood friends look on. It's like, you sure about that? Like, Are you sure that you want to be doing this? That seems kind of risky. That seems kind of crazy. And it's like, yes, I want to be around other people who are doing that same thing, because there's just like this like energy that you get from being around like people who dream big, just as big as you dream. And in this defining decade, it's like, man, like I'm never going to have the energy and time and like space to do the types of crazy things that I want to do in this decade. Personally, I want to start a family someday. Yeah. And I realize that things are going to be very different once that happens. I'm like, yeah, I want to take advantage of this time as much as I can before the next chapter starts.
Yeah, we forget, or I feel like I forget. I'm like, I'm a woman who wants a family and children. That is like literally just biological to like want that thing. Mm-hmm. And I think I often will get mad at myself, like, well, why should I want that? Like, I want to, like, be super ambitious in my career. I want, like, 50 years of momentum in my career. But it's like the reality of the situation is, well, if I maybe want to start a family one day, if I maybe want to have children one day, like, I'm just biologicalness, I'm going to literally just not have enough time in the day to go and do that, right? Like, I will have to split that amongst these two priorities. And so it does kind of feel like there's this pressure where, like, I have to get more done in my career earlier and faster if I want to, like, operate at an equal advantage as everyone else who, like, doesn't have children, right? And that is an advantage. Like, we can't pretend that's not real.
Yeah, that's tough. And that's something that my partner and I both talk about. Because, like, it's not just because I'm female and he's not. Like, we both want to be present parents when that happens. And so it's, like, on both of us to, like, hey, like, well, we need to get as ahead and as successful as we possibly can, have, like, enough of a foundation built up now before the family comes.
Yeah. No, that's a great point, right? Like, it's why is the burden on the woman? Like, it's a burden on the couple, the partner that wants to have the child. Yeah, totally. Do you think that, like, the next generation of young people are going to feel cringed out by the, like, influencer creator archetype and, like, almost, like, you know how, like, they say, like, every generation is skipped, like, they want what the opposite generation before didn't want. Like, I kind of have this feeling, like, they are going to think it's super cringe to, like, post everything publicly and want to have these really private lives.
Yeah, I think so, probably. Like, it's really interesting because I think about, like, you know, how a lot of parents today, like, newer parents are starting to parent their kids, and the idea of, like, gentle parenting that exists, which I think is super awesome. And I think, like, the kids that are growing up, that are being born now, or at least, like, a bit later, will grow up being, like, a lot more in tune with what they want. And I'm not sure what it is that they will want. I think there is a possibility that they look and they think, like, oh, like, you know, I don't want to be this type of creator. But there's also the possibility of, like, hey, you know, they realize, which I think that's probably, like, more of a possibility. They realize, hey, like, I know that I don't want to be a cog. I know that I don't want to go into this particular path. I know that I don't want to spend my entire life working to fulfill someone else's dreams. And I know that I don't want to be, like, that type of influencer or content creator. And so what I think is, like, more likely is just that the entire, like, I guess, industry of content creation and video content will become different in terms of the scope and scale of people's channels. Right. I personally believe that, like, YouTube will become bigger than television ever was. And so I think that there's, like, a lot of room for a lot of people to create a bunch of content, but just potentially not in formats that we've even seen yet.
Yeah, it's so hard to predict. And obviously, like, I don't know the right answer. You don't know the right answer. Like, we'll see what happens. But it does feel like fundamentally there's going to be this shift in this idea of, like, private versus public lives. But the number one thing being that I'm not going to just do something that, like, looks good on paper. I'm going to do something that, like, genuinely fulfills me. There's, like, way more of that acceptance of this idea. It's almost, like, now becoming more table stakes. 10 years ago, it was not table stakes to like, go run after your dreams, and, like, people were, like, much more okay with, you know, this idea of being a cog in the machine, doing the thing on paper that looks and sounds good, and, like, living their lives outside of their 9 to 5, right? And I think there's, like, less of an acceptance where, like, I want to live my dream in the confines of my 9 to 5 and enjoy it and love it. And if anything, like, if you really love what you're doing every minute of the day, you're going to do it outside of your 9 to 5, and you're going to be able to unlock a lot more potential just for the fact that you're putting more time into it.
Yeah, and, like, and also, like, you know, no shade to people who do have 9 to 5s, right? It's like, if you're in a job that you enjoy being in and that enables you to do the things in your life that you want to do, you've won. Like, that's incredible, right? So, like, yeah, I mean, I also think that's, like, a very personal thing as well. I think, like, the thing that will become more and more prevalent to a next generation is, like, more optionality. Right. So it's like, okay, I can do this if I want to. I can do this what I want to. I can do this what I want to. And it's like, I'm just a matter of figuring out for you individually, what is it that you want? And I think like that's probably something that, I mean, a lot of people struggle with now, and probably will struggle with more as time goes on, which is, you know, there have been multiple studies about how like the more options you have, the less happy you are with the final decision that you make.
Totally. If you could go back in time, if you could tell your younger self some advice, what would you tell her?
How young of a younger self?
Let's say 10, 15 years ago, something like that.
Okay. I would probably tell her, this might be like well, first, I would tell her that she's a badass and that she can do anything that she puts her mind to. And that, you know, I think like I still had like some degree of confidence back then, but a lot of that confidence was overshadowed by like wanting to fit in with peers. I think I would tell her like, hey, you don't have to fit in. I would also tell her that like, hey, I know things are hard. High school was the hardest time in my entire life. I would say, hey, I know things are hard now. And I know that high school or middle school is a rough time for you, but I promise you things will get better. And just because you don't have, like, you haven't found your people here, it doesn't mean that you'll never find them. And you'll actually end up finding most of your people outside of college because you tend to, you know, just not be surrounded by that type of people, and that's okay. And so I think it would mostly be around things of validating her quirkiness and difference. It's saying like, hey, like that's not a bad thing that you don't fit in.
It's actually a superpower. It's a strength. You want to stand out. And in this day and age, fitting in is not really how you get to go above and beyond and achieve like and unlock the next part of your career.
They say if you want an abnormal life, act like it. Right? Like if you want to be abnormal, you have to have an abnormal life. And I think like just, you know, in earlier in life when you're in middle school and high school and growing up, like that's the scariest, like the scariest thing to do is not fit in because we're all primed to want to fit into a group because like that's where the safety biologically is if you fit into a group. It's like, hey, like that's, if you do that, you're going to end up in following a path that you won't be happy in.
Yeah. What was that moment where you're like, it clicked, like actually fitting in doesn't make sense for me and it's not actually how I'm going to like get better at what I care about?
I think like the moment really clicked in my sophomore year of college when I was interning at a VC-backed startup based in Palo Alto. And I was there. It was weird because I was like the youngest person there by far. I was like the 13th employee in this company. And like during that time, I watched the company grow from like 13 to like 70 or something. Like it grew so much.
Yeah, that's a wild thing to experience in college as a sophomore.
It was, I mean, it was truly a life-changing experience. That internship changed the trajectory of my entire life. But in that moment, I looked at the other people working all around me. Most of them were software devs. But like still, it's like, and like, you know, and the founders of the company as well, because like, you know, I worked right beside them, desk to desk. And I thought like, hey, these are my people. I found them. They're not my age. They have completely different life experiences from me. But the things that they care about and the way that they think is how I think. And I think like, you know, it just clicked in my head of like, I had this feeling, this weird feeling at that moment of just thinking college is fake. Like, you know, like this is real. What we're doing here is real. We are making a real impact. We are doing real things. In college, everything is in a box. And I realized that it didn't matter if I fit in with my classmates because that was fake. That wasn't real life. That was college. And it just kind of like opened my mind to I'm not completely crazy or weird. My people do exist. They are out there. I just hadn't found them at that point.
Right. They're just outside of the box of what you know.
Yeah.
And that's actually a very relieving feeling of, actually adulthood, once I get out of college, is a place where I know I can thrive and get along and fit in. And like that is much better than being like, oh, when I leave college, I will no longer fit in. It's too scary, right? Like that's actually a red flag. So you kind of found that really early, which is I can see how that would have like helped build more of that inner confidence and like have that lightning bolt moment of like, oh, fitting in is actually not the goal.
For sure. And I think it's so funny too. I'm like, if I think back to like how I felt when I was in middle school, like the idea of like a graduate of college seemed like the oldest person, you know? It's
That's
like
so true.
And I was like, like, you know, and like the thought was, you know, at that point I would have like figured everything out by then, you know, and it's like the reality of things like, heck no, like I don't have anything figured out still, but it's like, it's a very freeing thought actually of saying that, hey, like you have more time than you think. You don't have to have, you know, everything figured out early or right out of college, or you don't even have to like have your friend group at that point. Like I know people who found their core group of friends in their 30s because like that's like just when that happened. And I think that like there's at least like growing up a lot of pressure to like try to like fit in and find a group of people really early, and though they will be your lifelong friends, but like most of the people that I know now, it's like their closest friends aren't people that they went to like high school with.
I mean, it logically doesn't make sense, right? If you're someone who's changing and advancing and becoming and growing, right? Like how can you fit in with the same types of people every single year? And the likelihood that they're actually growing in the exact same direction as you is actually very slim. So more likely what's happening is your friends, most people are like pretty stagnant. They're not changing as much. And so inherently, if you're changing a lot, it doesn't make sense you're going to get along with them. It actually takes a level of becoming a fully formed version of yourself, probably going to happen much later in your career, where it's like more realistic to be like, now I can find my forever friends. Like now I can find people who like think like me because I actually feel like solidified in like mindset and like who I actually want to be. And I think it's very okay to constantly, and even for as long as a decade, even more than that, like shifting your opinions, shifting who you are, and like learning and adapting in real time of like, okay, like who is this fully formed version of like what I want to be and like what legacy I want to leave in the world.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, thank you for like sharing all these things. Your journey is so inspiring, and I feel like we like really talked about things that have been on my mind recently, and I definitely like resonate with your story so much, and I'm so happy you're on the pod.
Thanks so much for having me again.
And now you're next up. We're gonna hang out.